Okay. The first thing I want to say is I offer a big thank you to this room. It has been a remarkable honor to serve as your secretary for the last 6 months. This room, to me, is what I would call my home or my home meeting. I spent a lot of time in the back edges of it, intimidated and impressed by the people in this space, and the fact that I have been embraced by so many of you is really, truly humbling. When I first started coming to meeting, I was in a lot of crisis from my childhood, a lot of violence, drug addiction, things like that. A lot of things that I actually couldn't accept as being problems, you know. I was beaten a lot as a kid, but I was never hit in the face. So I didn't think I was beaten because I never had a black eye. Things like that. But the interesting thing is, I remember hearing someone share once about how they'd grown tired of their own story and didn't want to share it anymore because they'd moved past it. And when I was in this room, it made me angry. It made me angry to hear that. It made me angry to hear things like, you know, I was addicted to the drama. And in my mind, I was like, I'm not addicted to the fucking drama. The drama just keeps finding me, right? But what I wasn't able to hear in those shares was the compassion for that time when I was addicted to my own drama. Of course I was addicted to my story. I wasn't healed from it. I needed people to hear it. I needed those people who did it to me to look me in the face and say, I am so sorry. You were right. You were helpless. You were a child. And this is no fault of your own. But those people were sick themselves. And so I was going to the wrong source. I spent a lot of time in these rooms, barely really being present in these rooms. I've shared this before, and I'll share it again. I would come once a month, sometimes twice a month, if it was a particularly wild, bad month, where furniture was being broken and, you know, fists were being thrown or whatever. But I would say things to people when I told them I went to Al-ANON, like, you know, I go to Al-ANON, but I'm not a 12-stepper. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a sponsor. I don't work the steps. I just hear cool shit at meetings, and then I feel better, you know? And then I started hearing, you know, my ear started to tune into things I guess I wasn't really ready to listen to. Things like, you know, the rooms are for, I've lost the word as I'm nervous in front of this space, but it's the steps that are for recovery, right? And I didn't want to get involved in them because I was addicted to my story. I was addicted to my pain because I still felt it. I brought a friend into program here once, and for the first time in this very room at the end of the meeting, they said, if anybody's willing to be a sponsor, raise your hand. Now, one of the things in my disease was it was impossible for me to ask for help. Impossible. If you needed me to come and literally build a wall in your house, I would show up at 8 in the morning with my tools, I'd frame you a wall, I'd insulate it, I'd add a window because I would think it was cool, and you'd like me more for it. But God forbid me walking up to someone in here in a place where, for free, there's no dues for membership, people just offer to share their experience, strength, and hope to help each other. But I couldn't ask. But I walked in, and they did this thing at the end of the meeting, and this guy who I'd watched for years and thought, that guy's got it together, I want that, raised his hand. And something in me, I definitely call it my higher power, said, you need to fucking walk across this room, walk up to that guy and say, hey man, I need help. So I did. And I have to tell you, it has begun to and continues to change my life. I am capable of enjoying my life now, even though I don't have, quote, everything, unquote, that I want, because I've learned that being happy with where I am doesn't mean I won't get to where I want to go. He told me to take service commitments, ones that made me raise my hand in the beginning and make an announcement. And I did. And it made me be seen in these rooms. It made me be present. It made so many of you become more than just faces, but friends and fellows. And as that started to happen, I started to recognize how much remarkable love there was in here for people who would listen and just say, yeah, man, I hear you. People who would say, do you want me to just listen or do you want my thoughts, rather than just offering me their solutions to my fucking life? You know? And then as that started to happen, and as I started to begin the process of working the steps, it started to illuminate to me how I was addicted to the drama in my life. How, with my brother, who is the first addict in my life. I won't call him my first qualifier, only because I think I qualify myself for this program with the way that I think and the way that I act and the way my fears can dominate me. But I started to notice that this guy who was a drug addict and physically abusive and emotionally way more abusive, that he didn't just owe me apologies. That I fucking poked that bear constantly. My brother could walk into my house and exhale too loudly, and the next words out of my mouth would be, what? What? And he would go, I didn't fucking say anything. And I would say, yeah, you did. I know what that fucking meant. And the next thing you know, like, this shit was insane. But that was me. That was my culpability. And I was not prepared to look at it. You know, I came into these rooms after literally all the furniture, not all, let's not be hyperbolic, a lot of the furniture in my house got broken in a fight with my brother. And I came in here, I was sitting at a friend's dining room table, and he's a fellow, and he started talking about this new thing he found called AL-ANON. And the next thing I knew, I was face down on his dining room table sobbing like a 4-year-old, which is where the trauma started. But I came in and I really expected to hear a room full of people being like, fuck addicts, fuck alcoholics, they're all pieces of shit. And what I heard was, this is my culpability in the situation. This is how I've created boundaries to develop a relationship with that person. This is how things have healed. This is what is out of my control. I can't get them sober. I can't make them better, and it's no longer my fault. And to me, it was a revelation. The revelation started with me in my head saying, fuck you, to every single one of you. Everyone. Because I didn't want to hear that. I just didn't want to hear it. But as I kept coming back, and as I then found a sponsor after years of sitting on the fringes, I started to get involved in what the work was. And more importantly, started to accept what the work could do for me, right? I didn't need them to apologize for me. It was my issue. It was an inside job that I work every day. This morning, I had a complete Al-Anon spin out. My brother's in New York. I'm watching his dogs. He texted me. He's like, hey, I know you have to pick me up at the airport tonight, but can I leave the dogs for one more night? Now, really what I should have said was, sure. But no, I didn't do that. I wrote, really? And then told him how his puppy woke me up at 6 o'clock in the morning after I climbed a mountain yesterday and how I wanted to kill her. And you know what he did? He wrote back to me, you know, you were gone in Australia for 3 weeks and I watched your dogs and I never complained once. And though you say yes to things I ask, you keep giving me grief. And all I could write back was, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for making you feel that way. I'm sorry, you're right. And that is why I have to keep coming back. Because when I'm tired and achy and cranky and hungry and lonely and whatever, those fucking monsters come out of me. And that's what I had to realize in this room. Like, yes, bad shit happened to me as a kid. Yes, I've dated addicts who have broken my heart and done things. But I got involved and invested in those situations. And if I do the work, then I can recognize what's safe and what isn't, right? That's why this room for me is so special, because I've never walked in here and felt afraid. And the more I come in, the more I spend time in here, the more loved I feel and the more present I can be. The last thing I want to say is this. There are many of you, I'm sure, who do what I did, which is come every now and again, sit on the edges, share, and don't do the work. You work the program however you want. I'm not here to tell you how. I can only tell you my experience. That at this point, I wish 10 years ago when I came into this room for the first time, I did the work because I realized how much happier I would be by working on myself. Thank you for letting me be of service and letting me share with you. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Hi, I'm Josh.
Josh.
Well, that seemed like a God shot to me, because that was exactly what we were talking about before. It reminded me of this moment I had with my brother. We were having lunch, and on numerous occasions, without him asking, if I was a little flush with cash, I would pick up his lunch. One day while having lunch with him, I decided at the end of, or towards the end of the meal, to say, "You should buy me lunch." And he was like, "Well, why?" And I said, "Because I buy you lunch all the time." And I thought I was joking, but I was making a point. And he was like, I'm unemployed right now. Now, I also knew he had a bunch of money in the bank, but that doesn't fucking matter, because it's not my business. But I kind of pushed the issue, which then turned into a conversation where I started talking about him and his work and how he should have a job. And if he can't get a job that he loves, he at least should get some kind of part-time job to put some fucking money in his bank so he can feel less stressed. And it turned nasty fast. And he left and did not pay for my lunch. And I called my sponsor, and he said to me this: "Hey, man, do you pay his rent?" "No." "Does he live in your place?" "No." "Do you loan him money?" "No." "Does he owe you money?" "No." "Okay, I get it. Because look, I'm a grown man, and I don't like people telling me how to live my life, and I'm sure you wouldn't either." And I felt so much shame. Not shamed, but shame for my behavior, which was shitty. Because as a kid, I fixed everyone's problems in the house. My father was an absolute rageaholic, and he could blow at any moment. And my brother, because shit rolls downhill, caught a lot of that from my dad. So my brother rolled it downhill to me. Then my brother would do crazy shit, like do drugs, steal shit, beat people up, whatever it was, and get in trouble, and then I would be his attorney. I would come in and negotiate his sentence and get it lowered. Because inside I was like, "Hey man, don't you see I love you? Maybe if you see that, you'll stop beating me up. You'll stop humiliating me in front of my friends or my girlfriend or just a park full of people." And deep inside, I carried that with me into my adult life. And I tried very hard to make him understand that he needed to see that and do nice shit for me, because I resented him for stuff I never discussed with him. The moment that I stopped doing that, and obviously by my first share, I haven't completely stopped doing it at all, as I did it this morning. My relationship with my brother has ultimately changed. I went through a breakup, and it was really painful. And I went to a friend's birthday where someone that I knew who also knew my ex-girlfriend was there, and she proceeded to tell me all the things that my ex-girlfriend wanted to tell me, which really fucked me up. And I had scheduled to go meet my brother after that, and I went and saw him, and I told him what happened. And I was really shook. And the next morning, I woke up, and I was really sad, really sad. And my brother calls me every morning between 8:18 and 8:37 a.m. And we always have the same conversation. "Yo, what's up, kid?" "Nothing." "What are you doing?" "I'm lying in bed." "Cool. What else?" "What else?" Every morning. And I'm always a little bit resentful of it, and also realize that if he didn't make that call, I'd really miss it. But this morning, he called me, and he said, "Hey, I just wanted to check in with you. I thought this might be a hard morning for you." And it gets me emotional now, because I could have never envisioned the thing that I wanted desperately to happen. And it happened by not me raging against the machine or shaming him for not buying me lunch. It happened by me at least beginning to accept him and continue and try to learn to do that. That's all I got. Thank you guys very much. The meeting is